Hello, everyone, and welcome to our booth at IBSx 2021. Hopefully the week so far has been treating you pretty well. We're excited about the presentation today. I want to take a minute and first introduce myself. My name is Paul Springer. I'm the National Director for AeroBarrier, headquartered here in Dayton, Ohio. All of the installer base and all of our builder interactions typically come from Dayton. So we'd like to welcome you in from wherever you're coming from. And I want to take a minute and introduce you to our speaker today. His name is Scott Stevens. He's coming to us from Ontario, Canada. Scott has actually been with AeroBarrier almost 3 years. He's a big piece of our business. He actually is responsible for our business up in Canada from a business growth and dealer acquisition standpoint. They are one of our largest installers in Canada and North America for that matter. So Scott brings a ton of experience and a lot of good information for you here today. So without any further ado, I want to get in and let Scott take over, but hopefully you'll get some good insights about what it means to be an AeroBarrier partner, how it works, and get some of the learnings from Scott along his journey with AeroBarrier. And what I would say is if you have questions, please put them in the chat box. We'll have a Q&A session afterwards where we can get into some details or answer any specific questions that you have, but let's let Scott get through his presentation and hopefully that'll answer a lot of the questions that you have. But if you have questions along the way, please feel free to throw them in the question box. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Scott Stevens and let you take it from there.
Great, thanks, Paul. Appreciate that introduction. And yes, I have been with AeroBarrier for 3 years now. It's amazing how fast it goes by, especially when you're having so much fun and learning so much. So today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Canadian experience. I just going to jump right into it here quickly. Is our Canadian experience has been very broad and vast. We've contacted a bunch of people, worked with a bunch of people, and yes, that is a shed you're looking at there on the left side of the screen. And we had an architect who wanted to have us personally on his own land. He wanted to see how it worked. We invited him to job sites, but he said, nope, I want you guys to come and I want you to seal up a shed. And that shed started at 1,500 CFM of leakage, and we got it down to 17. And on the right-hand side, we had a penthouse save where we achieved the lead numbers. The 2 top penthouse units, they were not getting their numbers. They called us in. These were finished units. We sealed them and saved the lead number. So we've also done everything in between, and we'll talk a little bit about that today as we go through our experience. So, but first, as I get going, just a little bit more on myself. So my name's Scott Stevens. I've been in the Toronto area. I run Air Sealing Pros, and as Paul said, I've been helping out in Canada doing the dealer development as well. And you can kind of see our Air Sealing Pros rig right beside it with our AeroBarrier logo on the truck because we're very, very, very proud of it. But my own experience has always been in the construction market, and I started in construction back in the 80s selling windows for Pella. And at that time, houses were just starting to get tightened up, and they're starting to think about windows more, more energy efficient products, starting to talk about the envelope and that sort of thing. And what had happened was I was selling a lot of windows, and those windows started sweating. So I then moved into ventilation to take care of the humidity. And I was at Venmar, Vanny, Brown Newtone for 28 years, and I left there as the VP of sales, and that's going to come back a little bit later because I was basically a desk jockey. So I'll include that a little bit more as we go forward and why that's important. So a couple years ago, then we came into AeroBarrier, heard about AeroBarrier, and we thought that, man, this really makes a lot of sense. And so today we're just going to touch base on why is air sealing important, the challenges of the traditional methods, how AeroBarrier overcomes these challenges, and some of our experiences, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So we'll try to keep it to that 30-40 minutes, and then we can get into Q&A if there are questions out there. So why is air sealing important? It's arguably the single greatest impact to any build. It comes to the quality, the build cost, the health, energy conservation. And the funny thing about that is that it is probably the hardest for builders to do consistently. So this is what really got our attention and really got us directed towards AeroBarrier. And some of the things that we know, uncontrolled air leakage accounts for as much as 40% of the winter energy use. We know that air leakage introduces moisture, noise, pollutants, pests. So it really becomes extremely important in that air leakage varies dramatically from hour to hour, day to day, season to season. And we also know that, moisture travels through holes. It follows air. So we, of course, thought that was important. Where in a half-inch square hole of leakage, you can put 30 liters of water into the wall over the heating system or over heating season. And so we know that these air barriers are just are very, very important because we just know that moisture follows air. And we build houses all about managing water. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to wick it away. We're trying to keep the moisture out of the walls because we don't want to create any situations where we're bringing mold into the walls and any of that moisture where it's going to hit that dew point and cause those problems. We've seen those over the, our decades and decades of building and building science. So components of heat loss, and we know these are some of the drivers and some of the things that were exciting. And I'm sorry, I'm going to talk a little bit Canadian versus USA. My experience is Canadian, so I'll just please bear with me. So I'm talking about the code up in here. The codes in Canada, we've been looking at it a long time, and these air leakage is the most significant factor. In the codes in 2012, you can see as a percentage that air leakage accounts for 30%. And then when you go to Energy Star, which in Canada is approximately, first level is 2.5 air changes per hour, it drops to 25% of the air leakage. And then when you get to R2000, some of you probably heard about R2000, a program that was launched in Canada in the 70s, and it grew, and it really was a pilot project for building science. And so it really was a guiding light. It drops down to 15%. And as we go through some code information, we know that we're just getting tighter. I don't know a lot of things, but I do know this: houses are not getting looser; they're only going to get tighter as we go forward. And we're seeing this in codes on both sides of the border. And it doesn't matter really what code it is, what standard it is. We just know that we're going to go to tighter structures, and each area is going to be different. And I'll show you a couple of the ones that we have in Canada that are kind of leading efforts as well. And we're moving to this metric. Everybody's seeing it. You're looking at ACH, probably might go to NLR in the future, but really the standard right now we're going to talk about, I'll use today, would be air changes per hour, and any of the figures that I reference would be at 50 pascals. And so failing this rework, it just and the rework creates a lot of lost opportunity, and it costs a lot. There's a lot in the rework, the labor, the material, the recertification, the missed revenue opportunity that, on additional products that the crews can be doing. So any of these builders or homeowners, if they're doing custom homes that are not achieving their goals, it's going to cost them. We just know that. I don't know who's out there, but if you've ever failed a blower door test, if you're a builder or you're a contractor and you're responsible for that, it's tough, and it can be quite a challenge when you're into finished product at the end. So meeting these codes and requirements and this is really, really important. And we've got this direction that we're going to continue to get tighter and tighter. And these are some of the programs, and we're seeing these right across North America. This Zero Energy Ready, we call it Net Zero Energy up here. Same sort of talk, just trying to get to a point where the houses are generating as much energy as they're using when we get to net zero energy ready. And then Energy Star, we have Energy Star here. You get the 2012 IECC, and then Passive House, which comes out of Germany, is now adopted in North America, kind of setting that leading standard of getting down to that 0.6 air changes per hour. And when you see this path from zero ready, we get down into zone 8 here of 1.5 to into 3 in the IECC, and then 0.6. This path to get to 1.5 is very challenging, and even much more challenging when we get to 0.6. And we are seeing the exact same sort of trend in Canada. So in the Canadian codes, I think there are 16 statements relative to kind of that air barrier and air leakage, and making sure that this is looked after in the structure. And we're also seeing this step towards net zero. And this is what I want to talk about. We're looking for these 15 to 20% incremental improvements as we go through. So, we've got this energy rating of 80, and in Canada we go up, and I know down in the US the scale goes down, but pretty much the same thing. We're just trying to get to this net zero ready or zero energy home. And right now we're seeing a lot in Canada in Energy Star. R2000 is still out there. It's a longer conversation because I think we blew it with that. It was a great program, kind of led at 1.5 air changes per hour with a few tweaks. I think it could have been the program, but that's okay. We'll leave that conversation aside. But really what we're going to is this net zero by 2032 in Canada. And I also know, one thing that I've seen in my life is that, when the US gets a hold of things, it really starts to take off. And we're starting to see that in many different areas right across the country. So North America as a whole is really concerned about air tightness, which is great for AeroBarrier. And this is what's driving us, and this is what motivates us, and this is why we're so interested in becoming an AeroBarrier partner. And in British Columbia, they're the first to adopt. They have this step code. It's pretty interesting, and these are the improvements that we're looking at in British Columbia. So each of our provinces is looking, and they're deciding if they go a national perspective or do they go into a more regional. But they've really taken some big steps in here. And step one, I think, is something in Canada. Builders, there was actually no metric for air changes per hour. But when you get into 2 and 3, and 3 is 1.5 air changes per hour, and that is a very challenging number to get to. And I'll talk about that as we go through my experience that I've seen actually on site of getting to 1.5. I've seen builders consistently come in at 1.7, but getting to 1.5 and lower, that becomes a challenge. So it's always, it's about this path to net zero as I'm talking about. And it's always cheaper to save a watt than it is to make a watt. So that's one of the things that we're always trying to do, is to save a watt. And then the other thing is to keep that moisture transfer from getting into the envelope. So our steps, we want to improve the envelope. That's big, and there's so many companies that are going after that. And builders are doing a good job. We're seeing a lot of that up in Canada, where our standard builder doing an Energy Star is hitting numbers of 2.5 air changes per hour, which is not bad, and they're doing this on a larger scale. Then there's also the resizing the mechanicals, because as we improve the thermal barrier, we reduce the air changes. Then we have to look at our mechanical systems as well. And of course, there's that challenge of heating versus cooling, but I'll leave that for the building scientists to talk about. And then adding renewable energy sources is going to be the last one. And we're seeing that, again, right across North America. I know it's big in the US, is solar. So we're seeing a lot more solar. I think we're just going to continue to see a lot more solar. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the biggest hurdle is always air leakage. So much so that I remember when I started with AeroBarrier, doing AeroBarrier up here, I would see some energy advisors, and we would talk to them, and it was very hard for them to wrap their head around, we can dial in our air changes, because once you can dial in your air change, everything flows from there. You can optimize the house based on air changes per hour. So this big hurdle is not becoming a hurdle anymore. And I know the energy advisors that I talked to, it was really, at the beginning, it was really challenging for them to wrap their head around this. Wow, just dial in and we can do the rest of the house as we see fit. So here's these GTAs, a Greater Toronto Area. These are production builders that, they're having a hard time seeing themselves get lower than 2. And we know that. We know that they can still build a good house, but getting below 2, it's challenging. Some of the benefits, and these are really the drivers. What really interests us in AeroBarrier was, the benefits of reduced air leakage, and you're going to experience a dramatic savings on home and heating and cooling in these high performance homes. So you get to see these immediate savings. And comfort. I think comfort is one of the biggest ones, for a homeowner. So it's more consistent room to room comfort with fewer drafts, and you just feel warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer. It's better. And then preventing moisture from entering the wall system. This to me is so critical, particularly for builders. We have a warranty program up here. So, it's important for builders to build a good structure that's not going to, rot away on the foundation. And then diminishing outside noise, up to 40% reduction outside noise from traffic and neighbors. And, when you get into these net zero ready houses, they're just really comfortable. They're quiet, and they feel comfortable, warmer, it's quite nice when you can't hear the traffic outside. And then defending against insects and pests. And I remember telling my sister about this 3 years ago, that this is what this product does. And she was in an existing home, fairly new, but she had these ants. And I said, no, that's what this AeroBarrier does. It's these small holes that she said she would easily, this is $4,000 come into it because I don't want ants anymore. So really defending against insects and pests, we think is a huge benefit, and really was of interest to us. And then improving indoor air quality. And because I was in the HRV business for so long, and ventilation, indoor air quality to me is critical. Would never live in a house that didn't have wasn't sealed tight and ventilated right. So again, a benefit that really is interesting to us and all of our colleagues here at Air Sealing Pros and AeroBarrier Canada. So just a quick recap, codes, definitely, we know the trend, net zero by 2032, we see that happening. We also know that the most challenging part is going to be air tightness. Energy, better insulation performance, reduced energy consumption, just a more comfortable environment as well, and healthier. So build it tight, ventilate it right. This mindset, the home needs to breathe. If we do it right and we use HRVs to we solve that problem already. That problem's already been taken care of. So if we follow good building science practice and build it tight and ventilate it right, we're going to build a better structure for the homeowners. So I wanted to talk today about the challenges of the traditional methods that we see, because we're constantly seeing inconsistent results, like I mentioned before, where we get these builders that can get down into that, either the two, getting to two and being consistent is the hardest part. And we have one builder who was saying to us, he goes, I don't get it. He goes, I get the same house with the same crew, 2 different streets, and they have 2 different numbers on them. And so we know that with AeroBarrier, we can give that more consistent result. So there's really a peace of mind for builders and custom home builders. Time and labor intensive savings. Chasing leaks is inefficient. We know that, and especially if the house is finished and you fail, it's brutal. It's so challenging to find it, and it's like playing whack-a-mole. And then there's the material waste. Nobody today wants to waste material. That's really critical. It's all about a green environment, and so wasting material is just unacceptable. And then now I'm sure it's the same down there, but up here, COVID has created scheduling challenges to the point where we're running kind of 7 days a week just to fit it in, because everybody's spread out because you can't have as many people on site. So you want to get in and out faster. That's really critical, I think, for builders, is to make sure that the trades aren't lingering around. Use of unhealthy materials, VOCs, off-gassing, that's important as well. We want to use a healthy material, and that's one of the things we really love. We spent a number of months looking at the sealant and components. I'll talk about that later, because the product is itself is fantastic with no VOCs. So traditional methods are suited for rough-in, and again, becomes costly once there's finished surfaces. So there's many trades. Who's responsible? What is your air barrier? These to us are the big ones, and we challenge builders on this for all the time. It's kind of fun actually when you're on site and we ask, even ask the foreman, what's your air barrier? How many of these foremen do not know what their air barrier is? These are seasoned guys. I know we worked on one site that had two foremen, and we asked both of them separately, and they both gave us different answers, and which is nice because you can have more than one air barrier. Problem is they both just didn't really know. And then who's responsible for it? Who's responsible for that air tightness? Like right now, it could be 20 or 22 different trades that are responsible for air tightness. So using AeroBarrier kind of takes that off their plates, because it's done. And we like to challenge builders also on how tight they build their houses. So we offer a challenge to all kinds of builders, whether custom builders, they're Bass builders, Pass Phillips builders. Every one of them tells us that they're going to build a tight house, and then we challenge them and we take our blower door out and just see where they're at. In most cases, they're not as good as what they think they are. So looking at some of these challenges, here's some pictures that have been taken. Like, you just look at poor execution and inconsistent sort of work that happens in the house. Some of this inconsistency here, wasted materials, what's that? just along, just you can see that in all the different frames here of really, it's a challenging process that we have going on here. And so we want to take that off their plates. And when we work with them, with a builder, we can reduce this execution, this poor execution, and we can also, do the materials. Oh, I've lost my screen. Paul? Good. Is that back now? I'm assuming it just came back to me. And so just to improve that waste of time. Thank you. And even the spray foam. And so this spray foam here, this is on the left. And we've seen some bad spray foam. This one is particularly bad. One of my colleagues who's in the spray foam business, every time he sees this, he asks us not to present it because it is a bad sort of spray foam job, but it does happen. Now, AeroBarrier is not going to fix that, but I can tell you what, diagnostically, if we fire up the machine, you're going to find these types of holes. And AeroBarrier fits really nicely in these really small sort of holes as well. So AeroBarrier just overcomes all of these traditional challenges. And like I said, we can dial in the results. And so it's convenient, it's cost effective, it's safe, and it's fast. So 3 hours, you can take a house, and I'll show you from, 3.5 down to 1.5. You can take, I've seen houses in 3 come down from 10 down to 3.5. And it's quick, it's convenient. And then from the dealer side, you can get a couple of these in a day. Smaller units, you get in 4 or 5 a day. So again, then when it becomes more cost effective with the more volume that we do. And so it can give you a consistently tighter building envelope. It's verified, predictable, documented results. It's a single process. It's time saving. And as Gord Cook says, hopefully most of you know who Gord is, one of the greatest building scientists I think we have in North America. It's the most excited I've been for the potential of a new product for the industry in years. And I echo that. I share that. I share that belief. So the process itself, I'm going to say process and process for everybody who will catch them all. They're basically 3 steps. So we prepare the house because what we want to do is we want to cover all horizontal finished surfaces. Anything the consumer is going to interact with later on, we want to make sure it's going to be covered, because the product does not stick to walls and vertical surfaces, but it does dry fall to horizontal surfaces. So when we started, we spent a lot of time covering all of the horizontal surfaces. We definitely cover or tape off all the drains, intentional openings like bathroom vents, HRV vents, any outside vents for water heaters, anything that has an intentional opening. Because we're going to pressurize the house up to 100 pascals, so we want to make sure that everything is sealed off, and then we just want to protect these horizontal surfaces. So then we start the sealing process, and that's where we begin to aerosolize. And so the fluid mixed with the air, it creates these tiny little particles, and these particles find their way to the exterior holes by way of the air. So it's all self-guided. And this at step 2 process, what happens is now, this is where we get our economy to scale. The crew can do one of 2 things. 1, they take a break, have a donut, and 2, they can start setting up for the next house. So you can kind of get leapfrog as you go down the subdivision. And step 3 is the software is regulating the entire process. It's got, controlling all the parameters. It's monitoring the sealing. It's recording all the data, verifying the air tightness in real time as this target is achieved. And you can see at the end, we end up giving a document that shows a path, that shows the results and shows the air tightness happening, like I say, in real time. And then on top of that, you can see all of the start point and the finish point. This is a really nice one here. Started at 3.14 and finished at 0.6, which and that was a few hours worth of time. It can seal, AeroBarrier seals up to 1/2 inch, but where I really like it is this human hair size. And I'm going to show you a picture that we took which really kind of shows what AeroBarrier is great at. So it's kind of like we tell builders, build yourself a good house, and we're going to make it great and consistent. And this is a stress tested with no signs of degradation after 40 years of accelerated testing. The sealant itself, and I mentioned this earlier, and this is one of the things that we really loved about the sealant. Is one, it's Green Guard Gold certified. It's National Green Belt Standard certified product. It's water-based. It's not a solvent. It's all cleaned up by water on site. It's an inert organic compound, ultra low VOCs and no off-gassing. And I was giving a presentation a couple of years ago, and there was a environmental engineer who asked me about this, and I said, I'll send you the safety data sheets, and I sent them to him the next day, and he looked at them. Within minutes, he wrote back, and basically he just said, wow, that's amazing. Like, this is a product that really does have low VOCs and really is friendly. And then it meets all of these different standards as well, which are acceptable in the construction trade. So this is our first seal that we did. This was a training seal that we did. It was in April of 2018, and it started at 5.23 air changes per hour, 50 pascals. And when we finished AeroBarrier, it was at 2.39, and this is a product. This semi was built in the early 90s. But here's a question I get a lot of, and this is where I think probably the most important thing on this slide is, what did it retest at? So in June 2019, we went back a year later and we tested it. It came out at 2.24, which was lower than we did because there were a couple of windows that ended up getting changed out. And so the renovation was ongoing. So we went to test last year, but with COVID, it just didn't happen. So we're going to test that again this year, but we expect that it's going to be in the same range. We do not see it changing. We think that's really, really critical. We had that question right off the top, but because it's a new technology, we didn't know. But now we have proof that it holds its seal. And we have one other place that we tested a year later, and it was exactly the same. We would test more, but with builders, it is challenging because they just want to leave the house alone, leave the consumer as it is. So we have a couple of controlled ones like this and the other townhouse that we can use to measure this as we go forward. But we're very confident, especially with our testing that we've done in the lab, that the seal will hold for a long time. So a little bit more of our history. Launched in 2018. We have done all kinds of different products out there. So we've done MURVs, we've done singles, we've done towns, multis, back-to-back stacks, renovations, passive, semis, high-rise, and of course the shed that I showed you earlier. So you can see right here that on the left side where our trailer is open, this was the first large job that we got. It was a rescue job. It was 38 townhouses. 12 of them were fully finished. They had every finishing in them: bathroom, kitchen, the whole thing. And it was a very interesting experience for us because they started at 8 to 10 air changes per hour. And one of the things that we did is we went in and we did some large hole remediation to get some of the big stuff out. We got rid of the raccoons that were living in some of the structures, and that helped a lot. Then we foamed up the halls, so that took it down a bit. But then we started sealing, and all 38 homes managed to get to the number they wanted, which was the Energy Star number for multis. And again, this experience was interesting because we talked earlier about whack-a-mole. It's the unit way far down here at the end. Before we got in, we could not get this thing down. It was about 12 air changes per hour. And we ended up doing with the large hole remediation, the builder did it. They ended up having to cut, before we got there, about 49 holes in the drywall as we're trying to find these holes. So we got in there, we helped them with some work, like I said, that large hole remediation, and we ended up getting that house down to 3.5 air changes per hour, which was an excellent result for a project, a very, very tough project. So this middle structure, this is Enercan's mechanical testing site. So Enercan that does all the sort of testing of mechanical residential mechanical equipment in Canada. It's done in this building here. They heard about AeroBarrier and they wanted to see it happen. We went in, and this was a really interesting. They were literally in the basement. There's millions of dollars worth of computers that we shut down, we covered, we did the seal, and we got that building down to under 1.5 air changes per hour. And so none of the equipment was affected whatsoever. So it turned out to be a really good seal and a great key learning as we go towards retrofits. Like, what are we going to do with retrofits and occupied houses? You know, this was one of those structures where we were able to say, hey, no, we can go in, we can cover, we can seal, and do a great job, and nothing will get damaged. So we learned a lot on that one as well. This one on the right here, this is a 40,000 square foot structure, about 260,000 cubic feet, and we did this in conjunction with Enbridge. It is a North York women's shelter. They were not achieving their goal. They wanted to be down at 1 air change per hour, and they were about 1.6, I believe it was, from memory. Enbridge had sponsored it, which is, you know, something, you know, we're seeing utilities get involved with AeroBarrier and helping builders out. Because, you know, the utilities certainly here in Canada have a large role to play with this energy efficiency, that because of the government mandates. But we worked on this project. We started it on a Friday with the taping. There, all the floors were in. There were toilets. There were everything, because they waited to the end, making it a little more challenging. We worked almost 24 hours straight on this building, and we ended up sealing it down to just slightly under 1 air change per hour. So 1 air change per hour, achieving the goal that they were looking for. This is a builder we have down in St. Thomas. This turned out to be the tightest semi-detached house I think that we have in Canada. It was finished at like a 0.15 when we finished, and now we're incorporated in this builder's build process. He does all of his attached product with AeroBarrier. We've done, again, these stacks in here. Again, we did some sound testing, which proved that it showed that there was some definitely improvement from room to room, or from unit to unit. This was one of our first passive houses that we did, and again, we got this down in that 0.3 range. And then again, another multi we did for another large scale builder. And we're always consistently getting in the 70% improvement in air tightness, with approximately 160 minutes of seal time. So again, sealing that envelope, it's not always easy. Lots of variables. You can see on the left-hand side, this still needs to be done. Still needs to, some of this foaming still needs to be done around the windows in proper areas. I like the rim joist, that sort of thing, to be done. I think that makes a lot of sense, and AeroBarrier fits really nicely in there. But I wanted to show you this slide on the right-hand side. This is a passive builder that we do work for. One is a very good passive builder, probably one of the best, been doing it a long time. Before it was even vogue, he was doing it. And on this house, you can see he told me he's got about $8,000 worth of tapes and stuff on this house with the zip panel. And we fired up the machine and we start sealing, and you can see the sealant starting to come out of this tape. And it was what turned out to be really interesting for our perspective was that, this house is built like many passive houses where you have the two sides and a breezeway between, and we had tape leaking on one side and not on the other. And again, this tape was installed by the same people at the same time. So you really, really don't know. So they get this great diagnostic capability. And here's a great builder that generally he's under 1, without batting an eye. And he's liking to be under, this 0.5, 0.4 is kind of his target below passive, and failing on some of the tape. So it's happening even to the best of. That's how elusive and tough it is. And again, that's why we're really interested in being with AeroBarrier and helping builders find these small little inconsistencies. So in the next house, we know that this builder is going to roll that tape a little bit better, and he may even choose a different day with weather. Was another key learning we had from it. We went back and checked the weather on that day, and it was a cooler day when that tape was rolled. So we're lots of key learnings as we go forward to help builders build better houses. I wanted to show you this, with this patented pending process. I get this all the time, that people are like, well, what happens to the sealant? Like, what if you use an exterior air barrier like this house? This was an Owens Corning house we did a test on that was finished inside. So it was drywalled, polyed. It was taped and modded, first mod, had 2x6 walls, had the 2-inch foam on the outside, which was all gasketed and all taped. And we found, I remember on this house, we found a couple of issues. on the house where the board, it looked like it was installed properly, but once we started pressurizing it at 100 pascals, we were able to find some challenges for the builder where they actually had to stop the machine and they fixed some of this Owens Corning. Owens Corning was on site as well. So, you know, this was a Formula One of houses. This was not just a regular house, and we still see mistakes in the build cycle. So but what I want to show you on this one here is, so you've got this house that's been drywalled, mudded, taped. It's got poly 2 inches, 2x6 with R24 in this house, 2 inches on the outside, taped and gasketed. And as we pressurize, you can see that this sealant started coming out as the seal was going on. But that was near the end of the seal. That's all that came out, because what ended up happening was the hole, wherever it was inside, because we don't know where the holes are, we don't know the shape, the sizes, that sort of thing. You know, the sealant started coming out, and then that's all that came out. And then we couldn't observe any more coming out as it sealed up. So this is how the system works with that pressure. The sealant, it can drive the sealant out to where it needs to be, right to the holes it needs to go to make that airtight. And you can see all kinds of different pictures I wanted to show you. Just, you know, it makes it such a nice bead of caulking around some of these, you know, these pieces here, and it really does seal it up, and it goes in areas that, you know, really don't have a lot of movement. You know, it's going to be there for a long time. And then the one I really want to show you is one of my favorite pictures, and my colleagues always laugh. They actually gave me a picture of this. I have it on my desk. This is the shim pick. And so this is an exterior door. This is the middle hinge, and this is the shim pack holding the frame of the door to the frame of the structure. If you were to walk around this house and try to point out where the holes are going to be before we started, there's absolutely no way you could pick them at here. You would maybe it's here, you know, maybe you thought it was over in this side, but where the white is, that's all the self-guided sealant going in and filling in those cracks. And this is where the biggest gain is, because they're literally going to be, you know, out of a standard house, you're going to have thousands and thousands of these awkward shaped holes that you can't find. And again, my favorite part of this picture is right down here. You see the cobweb. It's so environmentally friendly that, you know, it doesn't even move the cobweb. It just finds its way underneath and then seals the hole. And when I was doing this seal, I was looking at it, I was like, well, how much sealant is actually applied? How much is left in the house? Even, you know, the standard house takes approximately a 5-gallon pail, but, you know, a lot, as I mentioned earlier, it's dry fall, falls onto the floor. So I was like, well, how much sealant was applied? And so I was on this house, and it's an example of an Energy Star home. It started at 2.6. Its surface area of this 3,000 square foot home is about 7,000 square feet. So this blue area represents your 7,000 square feet of surface area, all that house surface to the outside. And so the total collective amount of sealant that was used in the entire house, if you collected up all the little holes and put them together, was 1 square foot to bring the house to less than 0.6 air changes per hour. And this was a fairly tight house to start with. So this black dot represents all of the collective sealant in this entire house to bring it down to 0.6. So small holes matter, especially when we start to build tight houses. This really makes a big difference. So to the point where I didn't think the math was right. And so I called Gord Cook, and I asked him, I said, you know, Gord, is this math right? We went through the math a couple of times, and we're right. It's a less than a square foot to bring a house, you know, a 3,000 square foot house down to 0.6, which to me is spectacular. It has a lot to do with, you know, those little holes in the shim picture and the shim pick. So some of our history is we started to sort of look and see plot, you know, timing and you know, kind of the air changes for the results. And you can see from this bubble graph, when we get into our projects, you can see where the intensity of the blue is. We started to see that, you know, we are in that 150, 160 sort of range, and approximately 70% improvement. And then this I wanted to talk to you guys about, just to let you know. So this is a project that we started. It was a net zero ready subdivision by a large builder. It was the first attempt at you know, any net zero ready houses on scale. It was 53 of them. They were 4-level structures. So you've got that basement and then 3 above ground. A challenging build, to say the least. So they realized early on that there's no way that they were going to be able to meet 1.5 air changes per hour without some help. And when we introduced them to AeroBarrier, they jumped on board, and they knew that this was, there's a real possibility it's going to take a lot of challenges that we talked about just a few minutes ago off of their plate. And I remember we started, the houses started in there around the 3 to 4 sort of range in here. And then as we were on site, we noticed this quickly, and we've seen this a couple of times. We noticed that they got better really quickly. We did some diagnostic work where we saw the foam was not installed well. So we talked to the site super, he talked to the foam guy, and the foam guy got better. We also saw some of the framers coming over and saying, hey, what was I on that house? They naturally get it. So we see this happening. And so these are all the start points, and then they come down, it's great. But then we've also seen this a couple times too, where they sort of let up on the pedal a little bit in their construction details. And generally speaking, then we see an improvement, and then we kind of see a letting up a little bit as well. So this is the part here, which we talked to the builder, where we're like, let's take that out of your build cycle, not just for this project, for every project going. So this we found was good data. And then we see that it gets a little bit better as we go. But these are all the start points. But this orangey line down here is where they all finished on pressurization. So these all finished, kind of under that 1 air change per hour, and their number was 1.5. So even when the mechanicals, the intentional openings were, the tape was taken off, everyone passed at 1.5, and a very challenging kind of build. We also spent some time this labor time study to achieve 1.5, because we want to know, does this make sense or not from a labor material? So we followed around this large production builder who does Energy Star houses, large from a Canadian perspective, 2,000 homes per year, and we tracked his crew that were responsible for air tightness across a 6-month study. We tallied the labor, the material. Results, we realized that there were approximately 16 additional hours across 3 visits at $55 per. So it's $880 of savings we feel that we can deliver to this builder by going to AeroBarrier versus using the traditional method. So then we also saw caulking foam tape per house, because they don't know where the holes are. They just start running around and foaming and taping just about everything. So now you've got this, not just the labor, but now you've got this material as well. It's another $950. And then site super time and concern and worry and crossing the fingers and all that sort of thing, getting mad at people, getting people to go back. What's that worth? And we know that we can take that frustration out. And one of the things that on that site that we had, the 53 net zero, when we first started on the site, I remember pulling in, and it was always tough to get a parking spot. And there's we had to fight for a parking spot. And then as the project went on and the site supers realized how valuable the AeroBarrier services were, we actually when we came, they designated a spot for us. They cleared everything out in advance, and we didn't have to wait because they understood the value of the service that we were doing. So the site supers get it when they see it. It makes a lot of sense. So we estimate the savings, when we work with a builder with the optimization and work with his crew, that anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 in savings by doing things right, but also including AeroBarrier in the process. And then trade-offs. And this to me is a big slide. So with the energy advisor's help, you can make these trade-offs and take credit for air tightness, and everything starts with air tightness. So that's how the entire optimization process works. And as I mentioned to you earlier, getting our EAs to get their heads around that at the beginning was fun to watch, but now they get it. Now they know they can dial in, and if they know that they can get 1 or 1.5, they can now start to play with other variables in the house. So exterior insulation, there's a savings there. The rainwater, heat recovery, 600, or triple pane windows, you can take that out for cost savings. And then even in some cases, there's the HRV, you're going to a more efficient HRV. And I look at it and I go, okay, what gives the homeowner the best value and the best comfort? I can tell you what, it's not drain water heat recovery. It's not even improved HRV or ERV performance, which I can't believe I'm saying because I love that product after spending almost 3 decades there. But you're going to get more impact from doing air tightness. Then there's the whole conversation of removing poly. And I know in some of the states, a little longer conversation, they've looked at it, some of the US states, we're looking it up here. We know that moisture moves with air. So logically, if there's no air movement, there's no moisture movement. Why are we having that vapor, that poly, which is costly? It can be a pain. We know that it can cause problems in the future. So longer conversation, but AeroBarrier, we're just starting in the marketplace. We're new. We're going to help the market get there. I wanted to talk, this is another experience that we had. Maybe indulge me for a few minutes, but this doesn't work, I guess, is kind of the question that people say. This is a 1942 semi in downtown Toronto, almost at the corner of Dufferin and Bloor. If you know the area, it's very, very busy. I know the guy that buys these houses, retrofits them, and then he rents them out as triplexes. And so when he bought this one, it was 9.81. And this guy at Solaris, he's a passive architect. He did some work, the regular remediation work, got to 6.1, did some spray pouring, 2.9. They got a little more jiggy with it. 2.43. Then he called in this area, he called in his energy advisor, who happens to be another good colleague of ours, and they worked at it and they got it down to 1.62. And so I called him, and this was on like the 7th, a couple of years ago, February, and I said, hey, where are you at? I knew he was close, and I said, you're going to do AeroBarrier, and I knew he wanted to get down to 0.6 because he is a passive architect. But this again, 1942 semi. So he said, no, just give me a day. I got myself, I've got the EA, we got another laborer. We're going to work all day and I'll call you later on. So I didn't hear from him. I called him at dinner and they just finished the test and they worked all day, 3 of them, and they got it all the way down to a whopping 1.61. They took out that much. So I said, I guess we'll be doing AeroBarrier. And he said, yeah. So we show up a few days later. We basically, because it was cold, it was -8 that day Celsius. We got it down to 0.34, and I remember I was back at my house at about 1:30, 2 o'clock that day, and for the most part, we ate some amazing Portuguese donuts and drank coffee that day with the architect. So we know that it works, and we say this is a retrofit, but it could be just like a new. Everything was ripped out. So, but as I said earlier, the shed, the high rise, the women's shelter, this 1942 semi, it doesn't matter. AeroBarrier doesn't matter. It doesn't care. It's not concerned about what the structure is. It just pressurizes it, and then the sealant does the work. It self-guided to the holes. And so we say, does this work? And here's a thermal picture. You can tell it's the same place, the outhouse right there on the sidewalk, but you can see the difference between these houses, all the work that EcoFlats had done, Tom and his team had done on this house. This is where they're at. So everything we're doing in terms of this high performance housing, it is working. And then on the right hand side, you can see this house has had nothing done to it, and this one, especially over here further right to it, you can see that the heat just barreling out of it. So we know that what we're doing is working. And then lastly, I want to say, kind of multi, we see a lot of guys, we're seeing a lot more mid-rise and multi sort of medium density type of housing. And this is a job that our dealer did in Vancouver. One of the things I liked about it, he did all 6 units of these units in 1 day. But look at these numbers. He ended up with 82% reduction in envelope leakage. So, 0.94, 0.971, but these are like incredible numbers. And there's absolutely no way the builder could have got there without using AeroBarrier. That's all I had today from a presentation standpoint. I would love to open up the floor, Paul, but really important to don't let air sealing manage you. Take control of the process. That's what we think. Don't finish your project, get it all finished, and then cross your fingers when the guy comes at the blower door, your EA comes at the blower door to test it, and take an advantage of the opportunity to optimize the structure right from the beginning. Now that you can dial in air leakage is where it starts. Now you can really optimize and become more efficient on site as well. And this AeroBarrier, I look at it, it's an opportunity like any other in building. As Gord Cook has said, it's probably one of the best ones he's seen. It's probably, we're probably since the days of HRV. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I'd be more than happy to open it up and answer a few questions.
Jeremiah, man.
You should be able to hear, and you're on camera now.
Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Perfect. So again, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you taking the time to do the presentation for us. And I'll reiterate what Scott said. If you have any questions or you want to talk about anything specific as it relates to AeroBarrier, go ahead and throw it in the chat. We're happy to talk about it right now. And I would also tell you, we do have a team of folks that are ready and willing to take any calls or answer any questions that you have. We can throw that link up in the chat. If you would like to talk to someone directly, we're happy to do that. But if you have any questions, throw them up in the chat right now. And Scott and I can go through those and try to answer some of those questions for you. So Scott, one of the questions that we have is, what is the single greatest benefit after adding AeroBarrier?
After adding AeroBarrier?
Yes.
Where are we talking? Are we talking a house with or without ventilation?
Your choice. I think it's just a generic question. What are the well, and I guess, hold on, let me finish reading the question. So not specific to the home, but to your business. So if you're adding AeroBarrier to your business, what do you see as the the greatest benefit that you've had?
Oh, so the greatest benefit I think that we've had is just we get an audience with builders, because this is a technology that it's just so difficult to do consistently, the air tightness. So our benefit is we get a direct audience to builders. We've contacted many builders, and I just compare. I have a friend in the window business, and I say, oh, I just talked to this guy, and he goes, oh, I haven't been able to get hold of that guy in like years, and we would call him on the first bit. So there's a huge interest to tightening up the structure. So I think there's this real, it's a real door opener to get in and to really start talking about it. So from there, if you're talking as a dealer, now you can look at doing other work or other products for those builders.
Perfect. And when you talk about selling it to the builders, what do you think the biggest challenges are as it relates to selling AeroBarrier to builders?
So many of them, it's cost driven. Let's face it, the builders are cost driven. So there's that, and there's this propensity to not want to change what we're doing. It's a very slow moving industry, I think building has over the years. So you've got this resistance to change, and then you've got this cost that you need to deal with the builder. So that's why we took the time to do the study, to show them that if we work together, we could actually save you money, save you headaches, be more consistent. And so I think there's a huge benefit to the builder for that.
And so if you were going to add it, if we have someone that's interested in adding AeroBarrier to their current business, if you could give them one piece of advice in getting started with AeroBarrier and getting it into the marketplace in their local market, what would you recommend?
So for me, I'd recommend, I think you need a sales action plan. I think that's really important. So you need to know the builders that you're going to talk to, and know what they're doing. So it's that education and piece as well, and just have a sales action plan of who you're going to go after.
Perfect. So we also have another question here. What is the post-process cleaning procedures, specifically cleaning the horizontal rough surfaces?
Yeah, so that's interesting. We just did a place yesterday. We're really interested right now in existing housing stock, and we're actually working with our local utility, Enbridge, that I showed you earlier, about how do we do that. This existing stock is really critical, because, and it's been elusive. They've been trying to seal up existing houses for as long as I can remember. There's a new program comes out, I think every 2 years, and so. But one of the challenges and concerns we have is cleanup, because we are misting a sealant into the air and we know that it's going to dry fall. So we did one yesterday, and it's quite interesting. The cleanup is very easy. It's such an interesting material. It sticks to 41 different common construction products, and it adheres. We've done this accelerated age testing of 40 years where we know we don't have any degradation in the product, but at the same time you can clean it, like if it's on trim or something, and it has happened where you can just rub it off. On the flooring, I know that my guys now, they're not as concerned about it getting on the floor as they used to be, because they know that they can clean it up fairly easily. And it's all water-based as well, so you know, it cleans up nicely, turns in the nozzles and the hoses, that sort of thing. So it really is. We do try to do all the protection up front, but it is, you can clean the surface at the end.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, you know, part of our prep process is we protect any finished horizontals, right? And we protect those finished horizontals not because we think it's going to seal them, but when we turn off the process, the sealant particles that are left are going to fall to whatever horizontal surface is there. So we protect any finished horizontals for cleanup purposes. And like Scott said, if you're at a rough end stage, your first coat of drywall mud, the subfloor being there it's not going to have a big impact on the subfloor. You know, right after the seal, it may be a little tacky, but there's not really a concern that it's going to have an adverse effect on any adhesion for the floor system or anything like that. So if you want to sweep it up, you could probably get a lot of it up with the drywall dust that is on the floor already. But for the most part, we don't really worry about cleaning up the subfloor or any of those unfinished surfaces that the sealant may land on. So we have another question. So as an integrator, is this something I could purchase and sell, or do I need to partner with another builder or subcontractor?
I'll let you answer that one, Paul.
Yeah, so our network is made up of really 3 key industry partners. We have some high performance builders that are a part of our network. We have some insulation contractors that are a part of our network, and drywall contractors. So general subcontractors are part of our network, but we also do a lot of work with integrators. So any of those trades or any of those businesses could bring AeroBarrier into their business and add it to their service offering, and then provide the service to builders. So we typically look for partners that are in the construction industry that have high engagement with builders or the customers that we're looking to attract. So outside of that, it would just be a matter of how is it integrating to your core business, and what would that look like adding it as a service? So we have another question. Is there any update on when you will be considered taking AeroBarrier to Europe? Roy, I believe I remember your name, and I appreciate your persistence. So we've introduced the AeroBarrier Connect, which is the system you see here at IBS. One of the things that has stopped us from going to the international market and not expanding outside of North America was we knew this system was coming, and we knew this system was something that we were working on, and we wanted this system to be live and launched prior to going outside the US. So now that this system is live, we can start doing the modifications needed to provide it to an international audience. But I apologize for the delay in being able to service the market effectively, but we were waiting for the AeroBarrier to Connect come to market. So there wasn't a change in product as soon as we got to the international market, and that product's here now. So we should be able to, I would say, give us 6 to 12 months, and we'll work with all the different power requirements and different restrictions that we may have. But with the new AeroBarrier Connect system that was launched this week, the international market is now going to open up, and we hope to start servicing that by the end of the year, I would guess.
And Roy, I had already told Paul that I'd be happily represented over there. Do at least a couple of initial trips.
Yeah, Scott and I will make the trip together. So can this be used on existing furnished house?
Yeah, this is where I was talking about with Enbridge, and we're looking to work with them to figure that. Yes, it can. There are some challenges, as what Paul and I are talking about. Finished surfaces is protecting them. You know, if you have an occupied house with a lot of personal effects, there are going to be some challenges for sure. But we have done a number of houses that are fully finished. Occupied, we've actually done a couple that are occupied where we've moved, some of the stuff has been moved out to the garage, some of the stuff has been put in the middle of the room and covered. But again, it comes down to, you do need to protect, you want to protect those finished surfaces, those finished horizontal surfaces, as particularly carpet is one of the things that we would like to protect. So our goal over the next couple of years is to work with the utility to actually find a good sample, a large sample of these finished houses so that we can actually have true data on that. But as I mentioned, that's why I led with the shed picture, because once you pressurize, you can seal up anything. It's just air escaping and taking the sealant with it to fill up the hole. So yes, it can, a little more work.
Yeah, and I'll add just a little bit to that. We're actually working with the DOE. So the Department of Energy has a Building America project with us, and we have a grant through them to use AeroBarrier on existing structures. And I'll clarify a little bit. When I say existing structures, finished structures, that's different than occupied. As Scott mentioned, you can do occupied homes. Currently, it's not necessarily recommended because there's a lot that goes into that and a lot of things that you need to be careful with. But we are working with the Department of Energy to apply AeroBarrier at the finished state of existing housing stock. So either when you buy and sell a house, you could actually do AeroBarrier before you move in, or at tenant turnover and apartment applications, that you can bring the existing housing stock in the market up to the newest energy code as far as air leakage is concerned, and then bring in the appropriate ventilation and things like that to make sure the home stays healthy. But we're actively working on that today. To Scott's point, we have a lot of installers that are doing it today. We had one of our partners in Arizona bought a house, and it started out at 7 ACH 50. Before he moved into that house, he sealed it, and he sealed it to 0.6 ACH 50 and brought in an ERV and some balanced ventilation, and now has a more comfortable, healthy home by just bringing AeroBarrier into the existing structure that he bought.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Paul, I think as a dealer base, someone asked the question, what else could you add with AeroBarrier? When you get into existing stock, you can now install other product. You can install the HRV, the ERV, bath fans. You can do type of cleaning. You can do even AeroSeal, duct cleaning. So you can actually expand that offering, and they can be related services.
Yep. So we have a question from Kevin, and Kevin, I may need your help understanding the question. Will this be offered in the U.S. after COVID? So we're in the U.S. today, and we're offering it to the market. If you'd like to find one of our installers, you can actually go to our website, aerobarrier.net, and at the bottom of that website in the footer, you'll find a partner locator. If you click on that link, it'll actually give you a map to where all of our installers are. So if you would like to talk to someone about getting it installed or see if there's an installer in your marketplace, that's a really good place to start. So another question, Scott, is when is the most effective time to install? After
first mud. We find that to be a great time. So, particularly up here in the colder climate, we like to be able to control the heat. The warmer we can keep the structure, the better the seal is going to be. It's going to be a little more efficient and effective. So we find and have standardized on after first mud. That being said, if you are using an exterior air barrier, you can actually pressurize anytime, or you can seal anytime you can pressurize the house and your air barrier is installed. So, of course, as a dealer, we like to make sure that, the builders understand where we're coming from. So we always say when we can pressurize and the air barrier is in, but our standard is after first mud.
Yep. Yeah, and I would just add to that and say anytime you can pressurize, we can apply. So from rough end to finished property, we can do the work. But to Scott's point, we really want to apply against that primary air barrier. So wherever you have designated that primary air barrier, obviously AeroBarrier is not that. We're an enhancement to the primary air barrier. So we'd like to apply against that substrate, whether it's your OSB at the exterior, like Scott was talking about, or if it's your drywall. Now, for multifamily applications, we want to go after drywall pretty much 100% of the time because we want to compartmentalize those units from each other. We want to reduce the transmission from unit to unit. So we'll seal those units individually after drywall to compartmentalize them from themselves. All right, it looks like we have one last question here. Is this a franchise or how do I get signed up? You want to take it, Scott?
I'll tell you, yeah, we are not a franchise. We are a dealership model. So basically, how we set up our dealers across North America is we strategically set them up. One of the things that's really important to both Paul and I is to make sure our dealers are successful. So we strategically locate them. We don't want to oversaturate and put 4 or 5 guys in the same market, and we want dealers that understand and, as Paul said, are kind of linked into the builder market. But it is a dealership model. Not a franchise model. Franchise model, as you know, has a lot of different legalities. There's a lot of different controls. So we don't tell people what they can sell at. Dealers are open to run their own business. So that would be the difference between the two. I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that we're a service offering, right? We aren't a franchise where we're going to control your business, control your marketing, and put these kind of confines around your business. We're a service that you can integrate into your current business offerings. We work on a license fee model. So it's, again, to Scott's point, a lot less legality involved in it. We do have some paperwork that would need to be signed, but we have less control over our install base and allow them to run their business as they see fit. All right, so it looks like we ran through all the questions. I'll put it out to the group one more time. If you have any additional questions, please let us know. Like I said, we do have a link if you'd like to talk to someone directly, specific to your situation. If you have questions and you want to talk about either your build process or your business and how AeroBarrier fits, we'd be happy to do that. And like I said, we'll throw that up in the chat for you so that if you'd like to engage with one of our sales team members, you can do so. But other than that, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Obviously, Scott's information is on the screen there. You can connect with us through our website at aerobarrier.net. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the rest of IBSx and the education that's available. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you and have a good day.
Great, thank you.